Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Last Minute A. This is a life science channel that helps you tackle all the sections in your life sciences that you may be finding difficult, intimidating. We break it all down here on this channel, make life easier for you. Today we are going to be looking at the female reproduction system again. So this is part 2. So this time we're going to be looking at oogenesis, embryogenesis, and pregnancy support structures. So let's start off with oogenesis. So oogenesis is basically the formation or development of egg cells inside a female's body. So this is actually a fun fact. I don't know if you guys know this, but when a woman is pregnant with a baby girl, they are also carrying their future potential grandchildren, which that is so cool. And the reason because of this is when a girl is still like growing in the mother's womb, they are also actually going through oogenesis. Like the egg cells are also developing and growing inside of them around that same time. So that's really cool to think that while a woman is pregnant with a baby girl, they are also carrying all of the eggs that could potentially be their grandchildren in the future. That is really amazing. So what happens is, let's just get into oogenesis right now so you understand how this happens. So the oogonia, which are the stem cells of the egg cells, they multiply by mitosis. And this happens while the fetal is developing. So the fetus, the female fetus is developing. So, but what will happen is that this primary oocyte will start going through meiosis 1, but it will only get into the preparation phase, which is prophase 1, and it will freeze in time during that stage of meiosis 1 until that female undergoes puberty. So now let's say that girl is now grown, she is a preteen or is a teenager, and now she's going through puberty. So once a girl hits puberty, she goes through her menstrual cycle every single month. So every single month, only one primary oocyte is gonna continue meiosis. So every month is just one primary oocyte. So this one primary oocyte will then continue meiosis 1 and finish meiosis 1. And once meiosis 1 is completed, so also just to mention, the primary oocyte is diploid. So it has 46 chromosomes at this point. So as it goes through meiosis 1, it will then form a large secondary oocyte, and this at the end of meiosis 1, that means now we have a secondary oocyte that is haploid. So this, you can consider this as a graphene follicle at this point, and it is haploid, which means it has 23 chromosomes. And also at the end of meiosis 1, you then get your first polar body. A polar body is just it just helps with taking up excess chromosomes or chromatids and making sure that the mature egg has enough cytoplasm, nutrient-rich cytoplasm, to keep the egg that is developing nice and healthy and with no excess chromosomes. So that's just the only function of polar bodies, and they also just deteriorate and die off inside the bodies. Now this secondary oocyte will undergo meiosis 2 now, but it will stop again, freeze at metaphase 2. So it's gonna freeze at metaphase 2, and then it gets released from the ovary during ovulation. So ovulation now occurs. The secondary oocyte that is now frozen at metaphase 2 gets released out of the ovary, and it goes to the fallopian tube. So now it is waiting there in the fallopian tube to get fertilized, to see if it will get fertilized. So if it does get fertilized by the sperm, meiosis 2 will finish, and then you'll have one mature ovum and one polar body. As I said, it just helps to discard excess chromosomes and chromatids, and that fertilized egg will become a zygote and it will undergo through that process. But if you that egg is not fertilized, it will not continue meiosis 2, and it will get like excreted out of your body through your period, and or your endometrium will come out during your period if it does not get fertilized. So I hope this was clear, but we can look at the structures here to see also where the position of the egg as it's developing. So as we mentioned, if you look at the ovary diagram especially, you see the oogonia, it will undergo mitosis and it will form a primary follicle which is still diploid, and it will continue undergoing mitosis, and then at some point it will then primary follicle or the primary oocytes will then undergo meiosis 1, complete meiosis 1 basically. And once it's completed meiosis 1, it will turn from being diploid to being haploid, forming the secondary oocyte or the Graafian follicle, if you may say. And you can see it's much more larger now. It will form the Graafian follicle or secondary oocyte, which is haploid, which will undergo meiosis 2, but will freeze at meiosis at metaphase 2, and then it will undergo ovulation, meaning it will get the egg will be released out of the ovaries. Once outside the ovaries, it will get to complete meiosis 2 if it gets fertilized. So I hope that was clear. There are diagrams that you can look at so you can be able to get an idea of what is happening and how it's happening as well. So now let's talk about what happens if the egg is fertilized by the sperm. What happens after that? So we already know what happens when it doesn't. You get your period, your endometrium gets released out of your body, the egg also gets released out of the body, it's done. But what happens if you do get fertilized? So once you're fertilized, that's when embryogenesis begins. That is basically like the development of the embryo, or what basically happens at the first month of your pregnancy. Like the egg, sperm fuse together and they form a zygote. That is fertilization. And fertilization occurs in the fallopian tubes. This zygote is formed. It's a single cell. It is now diploid because the sperm has 23 chromosomes and the egg has 23 chromosomes, and once they fuse together they form a diploid single cell called a zygote, which has 46 chromosomes. Now the zygote starts undergoing rapid meiotic division, cleavage. So it starts undergoing mitosis, and it will then develop, it will undergo mitosis and develop into smaller cells called blastomas. And after 3 days, these blastomas will form a solid ball of cells called the morula. So now the zygote has become the morula, a solid ball of cells called the morula. This is important to write it exactly as it is, like the whole phrase, the solid ball of cells in your exams. And after that, this solid ball of cells called the morula will develop a fluid-filled cavity inside of it, and that now, because of now that it has a fluid-filled cavity, it now becomes a plastocyte. So a plastocyte is a fluid-filled cavity cell. So this plastocyte now has two main parts. It has inner cell mass, which will morph into the embryo, and it has thromboblast cells, which will become the placenta. So the plastocyte is now entering the uterus and it starts to prepare for implantation. So as this is happening, this whole process is happening, the zygote undergoing mitosis, becoming the morula undergoing mitosis and having a fluid-filled cavity forming inside of it and becoming the plastocyte, it is moving down the fallopian tube, making its way to the uterus. So when it gets to the stage of being a plastocyte, it's like right into the uterus at this point. So now the plastocyte, or the embryo at this point, has reached the uterus, and now it starts the process of embedding itself into the endometrium, or onto the endometrium. And it start forming structures. There'll be structures that will start forming to allow this to happen, and the thromboblast cells start releasing HCG, which is a hormone that helps to maintain the pregnancy. So and this is how you can tell if you are pregnant, by the way. So when implantation has occurred, during that time maybe you have already missed a period, and if you take a test soon after you missed your period, you won't be able to tell that you are pregnant because there's still very low levels of HCG, which is also called human chorionic gonadotrophin hormone. Oh my god, that was so difficult to say, but just say HCG. And this is basically what helps to keep the pregnancy, and what will be used, or the levels of HCG are the ones that tell if you're pregnant. So when you pee on a test or a stick, that is how what it's detected in your urine, and that's the high levels will obviously show that okay, you're pregnant. So that's why it's all the advice for you to wait until a whole month of your period is missed and then test, because that's when it will be producing a higher amount, like already the placenta would have been starting to form, which will be producing a higher amount of HCG than the thromboblast cells. So yeah, at this point, once implantation has occurred, you're pregnant. This is where now you are considered pregnant, and I guess that's like now whole month one has already finished, and yeah, you're now already considered to be pregnant. So embryo or blastocyte is gonna continue to undergo mitosis, and it will start forming 3 germ layers: the ectoderm, which will later become the skin, brain, or nerve cells. So the ectoderm basically carries all the stem cells that will create skin, brain, and nerve cells. The mesoderm will also is like stem cells that will later differentiate and become muscles, bone, heart, and blood. And the endoderm will also differentiate, forming the gut, lungs, and the liver. So basically now the blueprint or the body structure is mapped out by these germ layers in the embryo, and they're gonna just keep undergoing mitosis over and over again to grow into these structures that will form the baby. That is the end of embryogenesis, and here we have a structure that basically shows the cell position in each stage as it's making its way down to the uterus, as it now is an embryo or a blastocyte, whatever you want to call it. So this is how it's going to look like. And now we're going to be looking at the pregnancy support structures, which are just some structures that now I've developed now that you have underwent implantation and the embryo has been continuously going through mitosis and developing these structures, and now these structures are going to help support the pregnancy for the entire 9 months. So let's start and talk about those structures. So we have the chorion, which is the outer membrane that surrounds the embryo, and it forms part of the placenta. So this chorion contains chorionic villi, which help with exchange of nutrients, gases between mother and fetus, and it anchoring the embryo to the uterine wall. So this is what really forms at the beginning. So the thromboblast cells, they form the chorion villi at the early stages of the pregnancy, so that they can help to the embryo to attach on the uterine wall, and also to allow for the embryo to get nourishment from the mom. So this structure is very important at the beginning, because the placenta has not really developed as yet. It is still developing. So this is what is the support structure and what allows for the embryo to anchor itself and be nourished. And it also again continues to produce the HCG to help maintain the pregnancy at this stage. Then as time continues and more mitosis occurs, the placenta will form, and the placenta will basically continue doing the job that the chorion was doing, but now this is the main organ that is responsible for this. And again, it will allow for the exchange of oxygen and nutrients from mother to fetus, and of carbon dioxide and waste from fetus to mother. Continue producing HCG to maintain the pregnancy, and progesterone to keep the uterine or the endometrium pumping blood and thick, and to provide cushion for the baby and the ability for the mom to keep nourishing the baby, just maintaining the entire pregnancy. And also now the placenta is forming is basically a protective barrier as well to help filter out harmful substances, but it cannot filter out alcohol and some drugs. So that's why it's important to not take drugs or drink alcohol while you're pregnant. Another fact, which is really not a fun fact but is an important fact to know, is that when a woman is pregnant and if she decides to drink alcohol or take drugs, when they give birth, when it's time to give birth, the baby starts suffering from withdrawal. So just like how an addict who is taking drugs or drinking alcohol, once they stop, they start having those urges and they start suffering from withdrawal and they start feeling pain and all of that. As that happens to an adult, it also happens to the baby, because the baby was constantly getting this alcohol and this drugs, and now it's not, because it's outside of the mother's body, and the baby instantly starts, and it's worse for the baby because it's constant supply, and the baby starts feeling withdrawal like instantly. So that's why it's important to not do that while you are pregnant if you're a woman, and to also not be around people who are doing like drinking alcohol or taking drugs if you are pregnant, if you're a woman and you are pregnant. And that's a very sad thing, because suffering from withdrawal as an adult, it is very painful already. So you can imagine how it is for a freshly born baby. That must be excruciating, and seeing those babies in that state is very painful to watch. So that's not a very fun fact, but something that should be known to everyone, father or mother. Also, the placenta helps to prevent direct mixing of maternal and fetal blood, which is also very important, because even as an individual, if you are going to get a transfusion, it is important for them to know your blood type and all of those things, because a baby and a mother, they don't have the same blood type. And so if they blood mix, the mother's body is going to think there's a foreign object in their body and we have to kill it. That's what's going to happen. The mother's body is going to start to feel like it has to kill the baby, because what is this blood? So that's why it's the blood of the mother and the baby is not supposed to mix. The next structure is the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord connects the fetus to the placenta. So the placenta is basically like the supermarket that is carrying all the nutrients and also carrying out all the waste. I don't know if supermarket is the right example, but you get what I'm saying, right? And then the placenta is basically the transportation. It's the transportation. So the the umbilical cord acts as Uber Eats and the dump trucks at the same time. So the two arteries, they are like the dump truck. They carry out the deoxygenated away from the baby and the waste away from the baby and take it to the placenta. And then also it serves as Uber Eats, because the one vein in the umbilical cord that forms the umbilical cord, it's bringing oxygen and oxygenated blood and nutrient-rich blood to the baby from the placenta. So it's just the lifeline. Basically, that's what it is. And then we have the amnion. The amnion is the membrane, the inner membrane that surrounds the fetus. I don't know if you ever seen real pictures or videos of a baby immediately coming out of their mother's womb. Some babies, they come out and they have some transparent sheet that is sticking on them, and that's the amnion. So it's like that little inner membrane that surrounds the baby, and inside that membrane it's amniotic fluid, very important fluid. And also when the mom's water break, the amnion has bursted and the amniotic fluid is coming out of her. So that's what that gush of water is. So that's why the contractions are basically serving to pop the bubble, which is the amnion, and also push the baby out. So the amniotic fluid serves as a shock absorber. Make sure the baby is cushioned and protected from bumps and pressure. If the mom falls or is moving a little bit too much, helps the baby not move in a way that it's going to be too dangerous for them. And also allows the fetus to move freely to help for the development of its muscles and bones. And also it maintains a constant temperature around the fetus. Babies do not know how to control their own body temperature. Like, their body temperature is not in a state of control, unlike ours. So even when they are born, you still have to make sure they are in a good temperature, not too hot, not too cold, which is very hard to determine if you're not feeling what the baby is feeling. But yes, the amniotic fluid helps provide a constant body temperature for the babies, and also prevents the dehydration of the skin or fetal tissue while they are still developing in the mother's womb. So again, here's the picture of all the structures that we have talked about and how they look inside the womb. Well, this is basically a picture in the early stages of pregnancy. So this is how everything is gonna look at that time. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, if you had just bumped into this video, please subscribe and hit the notification button so you will see every time I upload a new video. Leave a comment on topic sections that you want me to go through, and if you have any questions in any part of this video, please leave a comment down below. Share this video to your classmates and like this video so that YouTube knows that this content was actually good for you and everybody needs to watch it. Thank you so much for watching and supporting me, and I'll see you on the next episode. Bye. God bless. Good luck with your studies.